In 1945, a killer left a message on a wall written in his victim's own lipstick. He was 17 years old. Chicago had seen crime before. Chicago had seen murders before. But Chicago had never seen anything like this. A boy who killed, then begged the world to stop him. His name was William George Aarons, and his story is one of the darkest chapters in American criminal history. It was January 7, 1946. A cold, brutal Chicago winter. Frances Brown, a 33-year-old Navy Wave veteran, lived alone in her apartment at 3941 North Pine Grove Avenue. She had survived the war. She had come home safe, but home would not be safe for her. A neighbor found her the next morning. Frances was slumped over her bathtub, a knife driven deep into her neck, a gun wound already in her body. Her apartment was ransacked. Her belongings were scattered. And on the living room wall, written in Frances Brown's own red lipstick, were words that would freeze the blood of every person in Chicago. "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." The city went silent. No killer in American history had ever done this, left a written confession, a plea, a cry for help, smeared across a dead woman's wall in her own cosmetics. The press had a name for him within days. The lipstick killer. But Frances Brown was not his first victim. 6 months earlier, on June 5, 1945, Josephine Alice Ross, a 43-year-old widow, was found murdered in her apartment at 418 North Kenmore Avenue in Chicago. She had been stabbed repeatedly. Her killer had cut her throat. And strangely, almost compulsively, he had used adhesive tape to cover the wounds on her face after killing her, as if he could not bear to look at what he had done. The police found no clear suspect, no witnesses, no motive. The case went cold. Then Frances Brown died, and the wall was written. And then the third victim changed everything forever. January 7, 1946. The same night Frances Brown was murdered. The same date. A few miles away at 5943 North Farwell Avenue, 6-year-old Susan Dignan disappeared from her bedroom. Her window was open. The screen had been cut. A ransom note left behind demanded $20,000. The city erupted into panic. Police searched everywhere. Neighbors, parks, streets. And then in the sewer systems of Chicago's North Side, they found her dismembered, her small body cut into pieces and scattered across multiple catch basins. The killer had used the city's own underground network to dispose of a child. Susan Dignan was 6 years old. Chicago was no longer just frightened. Chicago was horrified. The city launched what became one of the largest manhunts in Illinois history. Hundreds of suspects were questioned. Dozens were hauled in. But the real break came on June 26, 1946, not through detective brilliance, but through a moment of ordinary courage. A janitor at 1320 North Dearborn Street, a residential building, spotted a young man coming out of an apartment that wasn't his. He called out. The young man ran. A chase began through the building. 2 police officers, Abner Cunningham and another officer, cornered him. He fought. He bit one officer so severely on the finger that the officer lost part of it, but they held him down. His name was William Aarons. He was 17 years old. A University of Chicago student. A boy with a near-genius IQ. A boy who had been arrested for burglary twice before, the first time at age 13, and who had been sent to a military school as rehabilitation. A boy who had been accepted into one of the finest universities in America at 16. And a boy who, according to the evidence, had been killing since before he could legally drive a car. The physical evidence against Aarons was staggering. Fingerprints found at the Dignan home matched Aarons'. A handwriting analysis of the ransom note matched his writing. Fibers, physical traces. A laundry bag linked to the Dignan crime scene was tied to him. Investigators found evidence of previous burglaries in his dormitory room, and more. Under enormous psychological pressure during interrogations that later became deeply controversial, Aarons confessed to all 3 murders. He described in detail how he had killed Josephine Ross, Frances Brown, and Susan Dignan. He told investigators he had written the lipstick message himself. in a state of desperation and self-horror. He said he had an alter ego, a personality he called George Merman. He claimed George did the killing. He claimed he blacked out. He claimed he could not control himself. On July 30, 1946, William Aarons pleaded guilty to all 3 murders in Cook County Criminal Court, Chicago, Illinois. He was given 3 consecutive life sentences, avoiding the electric chair. He was the youngest person in Illinois history to receive such a sentence at that time. He entered Stateville Correctional Center, then Pontiac Correctional Center, then Dixon Correctional Center. He spent 65 years in prison. For decades, Aarons maintained his innocence. He said the confession had been coerced. He said he had been beaten, drugged with sodium pentothal, subjected to a spinal tap without consent. Lawyers and investigators raised serious questions about whether the forensic evidence had been mishandled, whether the fingerprint analysis was flawed, whether a traumatized 17-year-old had confessed to crimes he did not commit. The courts rejected every appeal. On March 5, 2012, William Aarons died in the University of Illinois Medical Center in Chicago. He was 83 years old. He had never been freed. He died the oldest prisoner in the Illinois Department of Corrections. Whether William Aarons was the true lipstick killer, whether he acted alone, whether his confession was real, whether justice was served or destroyed, is a question that criminologists and legal scholars still debate today. But the wall in Francis Brown's apartment told its own story. "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more." Someone wrote those words. Someone felt that kind of darkness inside themselves. Someone stood over a dead woman and reached for her lipstick instead of walking away. That is the truth no debate can erase. Evil does not always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a 17-year-old boy with a genius IQ and a university scholarship, standing in a dead woman's living room, writing a message that the whole world would read for the next 80 years. Crime does not hide in the shadows of the unknown. Sometimes it writes its own confession on the wall. And still, the truth takes a lifetime to untangle. Goodbye for now, and I will see you very soon in our next story. Until then, stay safe, stay aware, and never forget, crime never wins in the end.